But when you're truly authentic, it's a different frequency. It's a different vibration. It's like when you say things, it has weight and something behind it, and you can tell. You can like feel it when you're talking to somebody or you're watching somebody. You're like, wow, that felt like them. We're so attracted to other people's authenticity when somebody's actually being themselves fully.
Today we're talking with a woman who wears many hats. She is a model, creative director, writer, designer, and multifaceted creator who has captured the hearts of so many on social media. Let's welcome Kitty Lever.
Hello!
Hello! How are you today?
I'm doing good. Excited to be here.
Good. You look beautiful.
Thank you. You're so beautiful.
Thank you. I'm really excited to dive into some really great topics with you and also just learn more about your story. So let's start with your upbringing. You went to a Department of Defense high school growing up.
Yes.
So can you talk about what that is and your experience there?
Yes, of course. So my dad was in the Army growing up, so I lived in like 15 different places throughout my childhood, which is crazy. So the last 3 high schools I went to, in my freshman year, I was in Olympia, Washington, and then my sophomore year, I was in El Paso, Texas, and then my junior and senior year, we finished up Fort Campbell, Kentucky. So I graduated from Fort Campbell High School, which is the Department of Defense high school. There's only like 2 in the entire country.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really have any other different experience than that, but
yeah. No, it's so interesting. There are only 2 high schools like that in the entire country. Having a curriculum where it's specifically tailored towards military kids, how do you think that has shaped you into the person that you are today?
You know, I think that just growing up around another military child, especially at the high school, like every single student there was a military child. I think I was just like brought up around resilience, and I grew up to be very adaptable. That was a trait and skill that I learned very young. So different than the curriculum, because I do believe that my education was amazing. It was more so the environment. It was, kids that had their parents deployed or are used to moving around all the time. So it was definitely getting to know a different type of person. I think, there's a lot of people that have their hometowns and like, oh, I've known these people since I was a baby or kindergarten, and like none of us would have any experience like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so interesting. And I think it's also so cool that you share this experience so candidly on your social media. And I think that's the reason why a lot of your audience fell in love with you, is because of your incredibly inspiring and unique journey. So talk to me about your modeling journey. How did that start?
Oh my gosh, my modeling journey. So I actually played Division I soccer in college, and I wasn't allowed to make money off my name, my brand, or my face until I was done, because I was on scholarship. So I wasn't able to model until 2021. Or 2020, and I was actually studying abroad in Puerto Rico, and that's actually where the modeling journey began, which is such a weird, interesting story. But COVID hit in March, so I had to go home, and I was like, wow, I really wanted to pursue this whole modeling thing, but it was completely shut down, obviously. COVID really took a toll on, everybody, but especially like graduating college and not being sure what to do. I had like 2 degrees, and I was like, you know what, I actually don't want to use them. So I use them in other ways, like the skill set, of course, but I wanted to pursue something in fashion. Yeah, so it began in Puerto Rico. I modeled a little bit in LA, Greece, and then New York City.
I love that. Yeah, so I know that you went to Greece to pursue modeling, but it didn't work out exactly like you hoped it would. So can you tell me about that experience?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. So I moved to Greece from Los Angeles. My mother agency at the time was like, you know what, we think that you could build your book out there, which building your book is essentially just building your portfolio and gaining experience. So I got signed in Athens, Greece, which was so random, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I saved up so much money to move there, and I will say it was still a successful experience because it got me to where I am today, and I was in front of the camera all the time. I was booking a lot of jobs, but the rates were so low there that like you couldn't actually make any money. And because it's a European market too, like with taxes and everything, you don't actually get your paycheck until like months and months later. So I ended up essentially running out of money there, and not making, I think, just breaking even. So instead of going back to LA, I actually had to move back home. So I was there for, I don't know, 4 to 6 months before I ended up moving to New York City. But it was tough. It felt like a failed journey, which was hard because it was something I really enjoyed and I found a lot of, you know, creativity in and ways of expressing myself. And I felt like modeling to me was less about vanity and more about expressing myself through pose and clothes. So I was definitely, you know, it definitely hurt. But I mean, we made it through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the reality for a lot of models who travel overseas to test out a market and then end up in debt. It's crazy. So having to move home and, you know, not having any money and having to work a serving job, I know you've spoken about. How did all of that affect you mentally?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I will never shame or shade that part of my life because I feel like that's the reality of so many people pursuing stuff in the arts. Like a lot of people, especially in New York City, like if you go to any establishment or restaurant or like serving position, they'll all say like, oh, I'm an actor. Oh, I'm trying to get on Broadway. Like that's part of, you know, everybody's journey. But I will say I was like door dashing a little bit at one point to make extra. I was doing a barista job too. And the wages are a lot different in like the southern states versus like New York City. But yeah, it was definitely hard. I remember like going through one of the worst existential crises of my life because I was kind of like, okay, I have 2 degrees and I'm not really using them and I want to pursue this modeling thing, but I'm not really even sure how this works because you hear a lot of stories and you want, you know, make your dreams come true. But the reality is a lot of models don't have like build a career in it, you know? So it's definitely tough. But
So in 2022, you decided to move to New York City to pursue modeling.
Yes.
How did you make that happen?
Oh my God, it's such a crazy story. Not really, but essentially somebody that I knew had started a mother agency and he was like, you know what, like I've seen so much of because I was already kind of sharing my story online and he was like, I don't think you're done modeling yet. Like I want to sign you to my mother agency, like get you moving to New York City. And I went out there a month early just to do like a test week and do a bunch of test shoots and like get to know the area, whatever. And I remember coming back to Tennessee and being like, wow, like there's a whole alternate reality that felt so authentic to me. Like I felt like I was supposed to be there. So when I came back, I literally told my parents, I was like, I would rather sleep on a bench in Central Park than, you know, continue to wake up another day here feeling like my dream life is waiting for me if I just like take the leap and take the chance. So
absolutely. Didn't you sell your car to move to New York City?
I did.
Crazy.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But it worked out. Because I mean you don't need a car here, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was definitely kind of like a buy-in to the entire experience.
Yeah, that is like a true sign of determination, I think. Like you were willing to do whatever it took to get to where you knew you needed to be. Looking back, do you think that decision was worth it?
Oh, of course, of course.
Yeah. So now you're in your dream city pursuing your dream career, but that comes with a whole new set of challenges, right? So can you talk to me about some of the struggles that you faced when you first came to New York City?
You know, the initial struggles is everything is so new and so exciting. And of course, everything is super expensive and you're also so scared of failure. But I think the beginning is just like, I look back and I'm like, wow, how did I do that? Because you're so naive and you're such a beginner that you're like so unsure about how actually big New York City is. And I feel like, you know, just becoming accustomed to the grind. You know, I was used to working hard, but I feel like you hit a point 3 to 6 months in where you're like, is this sustainable? Like, am I going to be able to survive here? You know?
Yeah.
I mean, going through so many different failed friendships and failed agency. The guy that, you know, the agent that got me to move here is somebody I don't even speak to anymore.
Wow.
So it's like, he got me here and his belief, you know, helped me get here. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, you're constantly cycling through new relationships and trying to navigate them and like who actually, you know, see something in you and who can actually get you there. Because I feel like a lot of people in New York City, like respectfully, they just talk so much about like what they can do with you, but at the end of the day, you are going to do it.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think everyone who moves here also kind of experiences this kind of disillusionment after romanticizing the city for so long, you know?
totally.
So how did you stay hopeful after that reality didn't necessarily meet your expectations?
I feel like just knowing that there was just no other choice and I knew that it was going to be hard, and just the idea that like, if I gave up today, what if tomorrow's the day it all works out? You know, just like, and I also feel like it's really important to pay attention to your green lights, because I think when you're chasing your dream, you have to be able to pivot in different situations. Like, oh, if I want to model, like it actually turned into something more of like social media and content creation, which I did the pivot and it was like, you know, fine. But I think like trying to maintain this adaptability throughout is like the most important thing you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you made a bold decision earlier in your modeling career to change your entire look and even change your name to Kitty. So what inspired that change and what impact do you think it had on your career?
Oh my gosh. So when I was in LA and I was in Greece, my name was like Katie. And my name is still Katie. Hello. When I go to my local coffee shop, like next to my apartment, I'm like, oh, Katie. Like I don't, you know, do the whole Kitty thing. But the Kitty is like, she's an alter ego, but she was a family nickname. Like my brother, my siblings, my parents, they all call me Kitty. So it was kind of this like nickname, private name made public, but it changed everything. Yeah, it changed everything. I think it became this like character, but when I changed it on Instagram and like social media, I felt like that's when everything started to change. Like I don't think I would be here as Katie, which is crazy to think about.
No, it makes sense though. How did you discover your unique style and your niche in this modeling world?
God, that's such a good question. You know, I felt like it was just kind of like stripping the layers of becoming myself. I always say like discovering yourself is just like peeling yourself like an onion.
Yeah.
It's like not like going out to find it. It's like comes from within. That's such a good question. Yeah. I feel like there was a point when I bleached my hair and bleached my eyebrows and started wearing white mascara where I was like, I don't want to be pretty anymore. Like I want to be weird. Like I want to be different. Like, and I want to express that, you know? And that's actually what ended up changing my life is like, you know, kind of becoming this person that wasn't afraid to go against like beauty standards. And I know I say that loosely because essentially like we were like the beauty standard, but in a way that's like different than what media was portraying at the time. You know?
No, I love that. Like fashion as a route to self-discovery almost. I think that's really cool. How has your modeling journey contributed to your personal growth and self-confidence?
I would say modeling has contributed. Well, I think first of all, just like being in front of a camera and letting yourself, you know, be kind of free, it definitely builds your confidence. But I would also say like, you know, modeling is really hard because at the end of the day, it's a job and agents will sign you or clients will book you simply based on, you know, like how you look on paper. It has nothing to do with who you are inside. So I feel like part of the journey has been, oh, okay, well, I'm not just a model. It's actually really interesting because the last few months, I think I've gotten the most modeling jobs I've ever gotten. While also like 2 or 3 months ago, I was like, I'm not a model first. I'm like a bunch of other things before that. Yeah. And it was almost like that level of detachment to, you know, who I thought I was what allowed me to be more successful in a way.
Absolutely. So you started sharing this journey on TikTok. What inspired you to share your life so transparently online, and was there any fear associated with that?
Honestly, at the time that I was starting to post on TikTok, which was in 2022-ish, maybe the end of 2021, I was like, I literally have nothing to lose. I remember having like 300 followers, 400 followers, and being like, this is the only algorithm at the time, like Reels wasn't a thing yet, that will allow people to find me that have never met me or know me. And so I used that to my advantage, and I was like, this is what's going to get me out of whatever it is. And like, there was a time where I was like posting on the back camera was like cracked, or the front camera, whatever.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm not gonna buy myself like a new phone or fix it until I like posted 30 days on TikTok.
Mhm.
Like that was like a reward,
that.
because I was like, by the time, you know, like I had to commit. Like I couldn't say like, oh, my front camera's broken, so I'm gonna get a new one so I can post on TikTok. I was like, I'm gonna start posting on TikTok so that like, you know, I want to get the new phone, and like, you know, it all came together.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. How do you think your vulnerability on this platform shaped your connection with the people who watch your videos?
Oh my God. The vulnerability aspect of it all is everything, because it felt so embarrassing. And also, when I was like kind of showcasing, you know, my shortcomings, it felt like that's hard, because like you don't want to be perceived as a failure. But I think the reality is, especially in New York City, is that, you know, a lot of people are going through things.
Yep.
And posting your shortcomings is actually like giving somebody like a virtual hug. And I wanted to post like the person that I needed to see online when I was, you know, really going through it. And I feel like that's what I want to be to everybody who follows me, is like, you know, oh, she did it, like I can do it too.
Exactly, a form of representation. Was there a specific moment where you realized that these videos were impactful?
You know, I think it's a lot of the messages I receive, and sometimes like obviously like when I see people in person, they'll like share their stories like, oh God, it was so crazy. A week ago, I was like filming like a "Can I have a piece" video.
Yeah.
And
I love those videos.
they're so interesting and funny. They're like a character that I play, but I
Yeah.
really like them. But there was somebody that was sitting behind us, like me and my friend. And after we were done filming, he came up and he was like, you know, you're like one of the reasons I moved to New York City. And I was like, oh my God, like that's so crazy to think about, like that impact, because it essentially is like the butterfly effect. Like somebody that influenced me allowed me to influence others, and it just like creates this ripple effect. It's very sweet.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Just seeing the impact in real time. You know, you talked about some of your biggest modeling opportunities coming from content creation. What do you think that says about trusting the process and just being open to unexpected pathways?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot of patience and consistency, and just having a unique voice, and also paying attention, because that was so many things, but paying attention to like what's working or how people are saying things, and like really fine-tuning your skills in social media, because I feel like what happened for me is I became really good at expressing myself online, because I think like everybody is fantastic and unique in their own way, but I found a way to do it online that people really resonate with. Yeah, what's the beginning part of the question?
No, yeah, I mean, I just wanted to understand how you think this has shaped your belief that like things happen the way they're supposed to, you know?
Yeah, totally. I would say like my biggest modeling opportunity to date has been working with Cosmopolitan magazine. That was crazy, but how they came into my email is they were like, oh, we really want to film, and we want this to be a content series, and we want this to be an editorial. Like they actually are doing a 6-page spread. It's going to be out, I think, November 2nd, which is exciting. Crazy. Yeah. It's so crazy. Yeah. But that was, you know, we sat down and we had a whole meeting about like the ideas that I had, and like how to make reels and TikToks from, you know, these same shots. And I was like, oh my God, like this, that was like the first time, and I was like, wow, like people are paying attention to me and like listening to me, and they're also attracted to this, you know, like level of vulnerability that isn't as emotional, but just like expressive in like yourself.
Yeah, yeah. You know? And it's so cool, those two worlds coinciding.
It's
how do you think social media has changed the landscape for models today?
I mean, I would honestly argue that like you have to be doing both. I think especially because like once you prove that you're likable online, or that, you know, you're popular online, essentially like they totally go hand in hand. At this point, it sucks, but like in order to have like a name or like be an icon in the industry, you have to have like a whole personality to back it up. And I feel like, you know, in the past, you didn't have to know the model to, you know, book them, but now it's like everything. It's not just like how they look, it's like who they are.
Yeah. How do you think your content has evolved since you first started?
I think, you know, so I did a reality show in December. It was called Follow Me Too, and it was a social media competition where you created videos. But at that time, I didn't really know how to edit. I knew how to do simple editing,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know how to like edit these transition videos or whatever. And like once I learned how to edit, I found like this whole new way of expressing myself online, where you have these transitions and you have these cuts, and like it's a whole new way. I feel so excited when I sit down and I have all the videos that I want to work with, and I can like blend them together and add in sounds and text and whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's completely evolved, because I used to just kind of like blah 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 blah, but now it's like different shots, like creating little movies, you know, adding music. It's like it's so different.
Yeah. You speak a lot about maintaining your authenticity as a creator online. And I think one of the places that this can be most difficult to do that is with family, right? So how do you navigate posting as your fully authentic self when you know that your family is watching?
You know, this is such a good question. I've been meaning to speak on this because they are watching, but what I realized is like, I just like can't care what they think. And I was thinking about it more because people were like, how do you not care what they think, blah blah blah. And I was like, you have to completely separate yourself from them, in a sense of like, I'm paying my own bills. So I feel like when you're not living under their roof and they're not paying for anything that has to do with your life, that's when you can say like, I'm doing it myself, like I don't really care what you think, you know? But you have to have that separation at first, because there's so many people that I think are still receiving like checks or income, or like living with their parents. So like they essentially have to care what their parents think. And I feel like once you become like free in your own life, like you become free from them, and eventually they understand and see like, oh, you know, she's doing her thing, like she's becoming more successful. But it was so hard in the beginning, like, oh my God, it was so hard. And I think sometimes our parents' worry comes off as like being very judgmental, but essentially they're just like, okay, how is she gonna like make this happen? But when you understand like the root of it, I feel like it makes it easier. And then once you start seeing some success and you start making your own money, it becomes like you can have a much healthier relationship with your family. But I know it's tough. It's so tough.
No, that's so true. And in one of your videos, you talked about how you wouldn't even be where you are today, which is in a position that now makes your family extremely proud, right? If you didn't share yourself authentically online.
Exactly.
And that alone is enough for you to continue doing just that.
Exactly.
And I think that that's so helpful too for people who aren't at that level yet, to see the power of authenticity working out for somebody else. Like you are an example that people can follow. So why do you think authenticity is important as a creative? Not only as a creative, but also just, you know, as a person and in your various roles as a designer, a writer, a content creator?
Yeah, being authentic is everything, but it's hard. And I feel like we throw that around a lot, but when you're truly authentic, it's a different frequency, it's a different vibration. It's like when you say things that has weight and something behind it, and you can tell, you can like feel it when you're talking to somebody or you're watching somebody, you're like, wow, that felt like them. You know, and we're so attracted to other people's authenticity when somebody's actually being themselves fully. I think it's so funny when I'll do like random, like the little quirks that a person has. It's like I'll like growl or like whatever I want to do. Like, and people are like almost so drawn to that. And it is so encouraging to be more of yourself, you know?
Absolutely. As a multifaceted creator, how do you define creativity? What does that mean to you, you know, in your various roles?
Wow, that's such a good question. I think creativity is like your ability to communicate, but also solve problems, and also, but a problem can be anything. I feel like even if it's like heartbreak, it's your ability to communicate that and reach somebody else. Because I think creativity is also connection, and there's so many different hidden meanings that would only make sense to you, but somebody else could resonate with. Yeah, that's such an interesting question. How would you define creativity?
That's, you know what, that's really interesting to me, because growing up, I never considered myself a creative person. So it's something that I actually think about a lot. You know, I think creativity is about tapping into what you can bring to something. So obviously, like, creativity is unique. You know, it's unique to every person. And I think we throw around that word a lot, like you said, and it's hard to like see yourself as a creative person when you're going by somebody else's definition of creativity. So to me, like, finding my creative, you know, tick is all about understanding myself, if that makes sense. And that allows me to be more creative, whatever that means to you. Yeah, I don't know. Would
It's
you
like
agree?
a way of doing things that is a process, because
Yeah.
I think it's like, even if you task 3 people with like bringing a heavy object up the stairs and they all do it a little bit differently, like they'll all have their own creative spin on bringing something up the stairs. You know, it's like a piece of you. It's a process that you have.
Right.
How
creative
you approach
process.
things.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think social media has had an impact in any way on how you create? And has it influenced your work in any way?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would have never been making videos if not for social media, which is like such a huge part of myself. I love sitting down and just like making the little videos. Also, I think making everything digital in terms of like Instagram and like swiping through and little graphics, like it's totally like putting out pieces of me on the internet, because that's what I really like to think of it as, you know. And I think that's kind of what people maybe see a little bit differently in my posts and, you know, past versions of me or other people, is kind of this like, oh, this is like a piece of her. This is like what she's thinking and this is her life. And it's not just like, oh, like, look how pretty I am and like, look what food I'm eating. I feel like it's a little bit different.
Yeah,
it's like
for sure.
telling a story within a photo.
Visual storytelling. You know, your entire brand really embodies this very ethereal and whimsical appeal. How did you even go about developing this aesthetic, or has it always been just a part of you?
It's just me. It feels the most like me. I will say that I'm heavily influenced by Alice in Wonderland. I've like read the original book. I've seen all the different movie adaptations, and I'm like, wow, like it feels, because it's so nonsensical and it's so sweet, and it's like, you know, the characters, the White Rabbit, the Mad Hatter, like all of the different characters. I feel like I see myself in that story so often. I sometimes just think of myself as like a character within Alice in Wonderland, which is kind of crazy. But
no, I love that though.
Yeah, I feel like the whimsicalness is like, that's just what makes life more fun. And it's like finding joy in different parts of your life and trusting all of it, you know?
Absolutely. I want to talk about your writing a little bit. You described it as being for deep thinkers and feelers. How does this perspective influence what you choose to write about?
You know, I think when I said that, deep feelers, deep thinkers, it was almost like, because I think a lot of the stuff we post online is a projection. So I felt like, you know, this is a place where I'm going to really feel whatever emotions I'm feeling, and I'm not going to feel embarrassed about it. And like, I'm going to be vulnerable with whoever is subscribed to, you know, the email list or whatever. And it kind of just created this safe space that I can be overboard or over passionate or like share a little bit too much and like be very vulnerable. I like was just recently kind of writing about I just got off Adderall like a month, maybe like 6 weeks ago, which it was a prescription that I had for ADHD, but I kind of just like weaned myself off of it. And like just being very vulnerable and candid about sharing that is like, oof, like, you know, it allows somebody to kind of like critically look at my life and the things I write about, and even just like a peek inside, if that makes sense. But the deep feelers and deep thinkers, it was almost like, don't even apologize for feeling too much. I think that's the coolest thing that somebody can do, is like care. Yeah,
absolutely. Do you have any sort of writing process? And if so, how does it differ from your other creative endeavors like design or content creation?
You know, I actually wish I had more of like a
process.
I am going to enroll in a writing workshop. I think those are very helpful. I'm a student of life. Like, I love to learn things, and I feel like stacking your calendar with as many opportunities to learn something new or cultivate something you really enjoy is so important. But the writing process, honestly, it just strikes me whenever like I have notebooks, I have like my notes app, I have my computer, like I have like a running draft memoir that I've been writing for like, I don't even know. It's kind of like an open journal, but it's a little bit different. But it kind of is just whenever it strikes. I mean, I genuinely enjoy writing, and I feel like I find ways of expressing myself or how I feel about something as I'm writing it. But also not like pressing it or forcing it. Although I have found even if I do force it, I find something amazing, and I'm like, wow, that was good. I'm glad I pushed myself to do that. But it's more so just like the discipline to the process, like finding little time here and there to write and cultivate that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
important.
that's true. How have your personal experiences influenced the themes and the topics that you explore in your writing?
I think just like I try to be that big sister advice. It's so crazy because I think when I first got on TikTok, I thought I had to be like this super young girl, like oh, she's so, like Gen Z, whatever. But I found when I leaned into like, oh, like no, I've been living and I have this advice and I have this wisdom. That's when you attract an audience because people are attracted to that,
Yeah.
So I kind of write from this idea of like the big sister, like pieces of wisdom, encouragement. I've always felt like my purpose in life is to encourage other people to keep living. So that's kind of essentially what that, email blast is or writing is encouragement generally. And then just kind of like exploring different ideas as they relate to my life. If it's heartbreak, if it's friendship breakups, if it's stuff to do with family or career, like I kind of just try to cover all the bases just depending on what I'm kind of going through in the moment.
Oh, I love that so much.
Thank you.
You speak about the power of writing and journaling on your platform quite often. How has writing contributed to your growth as an individual?
I think it allows you to explore yourself and connect the dots and kind of intellectualize what you're thinking and have different breakthroughs. I feel like I also love to like read and write with like they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
But you're also affirming what you think. I think sometimes people don't even know what they think until they say it out loud or they write it down.
Yeah.
So yeah, it allowed me to become a better communicator and actually like, get in touch with how I'm actually feeling about something.
Yeah.
Do you write?
I do. And I really like what you're saying, especially about reading and writing going hand in hand. I'm going to try that probably tonight. But yeah, I do. I want to become more of a writer in a professional sense. So what advice do you have for other creatives who are looking to incorporate writing into their work but are uncertain of their abilities or where to start?
Just write. Just do it. Like, hello. Like, your first anything is going to be bad, objectively. But it's the best because it's like you did it. You tried. And anybody that makes you feel bad about trying, it's like, okay, loser, like, unfollow me. Like, I don't... And usually it's just their own projected shame. Like, oh, they wish they had the courage to do that. And, like, that's their journey. But, like, you have to just start doing it. I mean, I used to not want to call myself a writer because, I haven't published yet or whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, it could be bad, but it's like, everybody's a writer. Everybody's an artist. Like, just kind of embrace it.
Yeah, I love that.
You kind of taking the reins on that in your own life is going to inspire somebody else. And, like, that's all that life is about, really. Yeah. It's the butterfly effect. It goes all the way back to that.
Yeah, so true. Looking back on your journey so far, what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned about creative expression and just staying true to yourself?
The biggest lesson, I would just say, like, it's so crazy because they always say, like, when you become, like, this 70-year-old person, their advice is always, like, stop caring about what people think. But, yeah, the biggest lesson is just, like, who cares? Like, it's so easy and it's so much easier said than done. But, like, who cares? Like, I think my lesson mostly was, like, if posting whatever I want to post or creating what I want to create, like, pushes people away, then, like, goodbye. Like, like, let them go. Like, getting more comfortable, being misunderstood or, like, letting people go is just, like, be so certain of yourself and who you are that, nobody can convince you otherwise,
Yeah. Oh, that's such great advice. Thank you so much. Kitty, thank you for coming in and sharing your story with us. And a big thank you to you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to check the description for more information. And as always, tune in next week for another episode of How She Did It.